Okay, Crim 15. We are at Chapter 11, Ethics of Punishment and Corrections. If there were an area where I was most familiar with ethics and really now my dog decides to go take a big old drink of water. Of course, the second I hit record. But anyways, corrections would be the place where I feel probably most confident. This is a world that I lived in or worked in for. I didn't live in prison, but I worked in the world of corrections for a long time. So there's a lot of ethical issues to consider in the world of corrections as well. Here are your learning objectives for this chapter. As usual, you can go back and look at those if you want to. But chapter starts with the five elements of punishment. There are two people involved, the punisher and the person being punished, or the punishee, as I like to say. That's a new word that I just made up, by the way. The punisher inflicts the harm on the one being punished. Punisher is authorized by law to inflict punishment. The one being punished has been judged to be in violation of a criminal law, and the inflicted harm is meted out specifically as punishment for that violation of criminal law. Okay, so your punisher is typically going to be the person who's working in the world of corrections. And we're not talking about a person who is physically causing harm to someone when we're talking about the world of corrections. We're talking about a sentence being handed out. Treatment, in correctional terminology, treatment is anything that's basically being used to correct behavior or treat a problem. So the elimination of dysfunctional or deviant behavior. So getting rid of the bad behavior and encouraging productive or normal behavior. So we want to get rid of the bad behavior and encourage good behavior. Those are the goals. Oop, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. But we're done with that one anyway. So social contract, that is what we, society, live by. That's what you live by every day, whether you know it or not, or whether you mean to or not. We all live by a social contract. Just by living in society, we agree informally to live by a social contract. We avoid social chaos by giving the state power to control us. Yes, you right now are being controlled by the state, by the country, by the government of the United States. I also am being controlled by that same government. I am not driving 95 miles an hour everywhere, even though I would like to, because I choose to live by that social contract, right? We all live by a social contract in order to be part of society, okay? The state is limited on how much control they can exert over us. And this is one of these big things. If you look at kind of a lot of the political stuff that's going on, the anti-maskers and the anti-vaxxers are people that are saying, wait a minute, the state is exerting too much control over us. We don't like the amount of control that the state is exerting over us. We didn't sign up for that particular social contract. For consistency with the social contract, the state should exert its power only to protect, and any further interventions with civil liberties are warranted. Okay, Retribution. Okay, why do I say it like that? I say retribution like that because retribution sounds a lot like restitution. Restitution and retribution are two different things. Retribution, I like to describe it as, you have a definition on your screen here. I like to describe it as the concept of an eye for an eye. Vengeance, getting even with someone, revenge. Retribution is kind of like, I personally see the term retribution as a negative thing. Although I'm not going to say that I am above retribution. If someone were to hurt someone that I love, my kids, my mom, my husband, somebody that I love, something bad were to happen to one of my students, and I were to find out, who the suspect was that did something bad, Would I want retribution? I shouldn't say seek it. No, I'm not going to go out and kill somebody. But would I want retribution? Would I want vengeance? Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, good, bad, or otherwise, it's kind of natural to want revenge. Now, I'm not saying it's right to want revenge, but I'm saying that it is probably something that's fairly natural. But retribution is that kind of that thirst for revenge. Restitution, and I'm only telling you this so we don't get it confused later on. Restitution is basically paying someone back for damages you caused. Okay, so don't get those too confused. Prevention. Of course, one of the concepts of corrections is to prevent someone from, you know what, let me go back. One of the whole concepts of corrections, again, is retribution as well. That people want to get even with people. They want to see people suffer for what they did. They want them to pay the price for what they did. So retribution is one of those key elements in corrections. Prevention is also another one of those. How do we prevent people from committing crimes in the future? We can deter them, and we're going to talk more about that in the next slide. We can incapacitate them or lock them up so that they are unable to commit crimes, or we can treat them so that they no longer have the issue which causes them to commit that behavior. Specific deterrence, general deterrence. I'm going to give you an example of each of these. Some of you who've taken my classes before will have heard these examples because I use them all the time, but I think they're funny. So understand these are made up examples. This did not happen. Okay. Specific deterrence. Oh yeah, that was my phone. Maybe I could put it on silent while I'm actually recording. I don't know. Whatever. I'm sitting in my living room, so I'm allowed to leave my phone on. Specific deterrence. This is a story. So no, I did not do this. My husband and I decided to go to a friend's house. They're having a party. And while we're there, we drive over there. They live about 15 minutes away. We drive over there. While we're there, I have 8 shots of Fireball. Because why not, right? Okay, so then it's time to leave. We've been there for about an hour, and I had 8 shots of Fireball, okay? And big shots, 2-ounce shots. And it's time to leave. I grab my car keys. I start walking toward the car, and I'm about to put my to unlock the car door and get in, and I remember, oh man, remember that DUI I got? Remember how much money that cost me? Remember how embarrassing it was when I lost my license? Remember when I went to jail and I had to sit in the drunk tank? Remember how awful it was when I had to pay all those court fines? Man, that was awful. I don't want to go through that again. I don't think I'm going to drive home. I'm going to call an Uber. Okay? Hello, now I got an email too. I was specifically deterred from committing that act because I learned from my own punishment, from something else that had happened to me personally in the past that made me not want to do it again. I was deterred through my own example. Okay? Specific deterrence. Moving on, general deterrence. Same story. Me and my husband decide to go to a party. It's 15 minutes away. We drive over there. While I'm there, I have 8 shots of Fireball. An hour later, it's time to go home. I'm thinking, I walk out to the car, I open the car door, I start to get in, and I think, oh my gosh, remember that time my husband got that DUI? Remember how horrible it was? Remember he couldn't drive, how expensive it was, how embarrassing it was, how he had to go to jail, and I realized at that moment, I don't think I want to drive because I saw what he went through and I don't want to go through the same thing. Make sense? I learned from his example. I didn't learn from my own, but I learned through him. Aha, right? Okay. So that's deterrence, specific and general. Incapacitation. The whole concept of incapacitation is basically you just lock someone up until they can no longer commit a crime. That's it. 3 strikes laws. Okay, These are really controversial, and honestly, a lot of this, I think people don't understand them either. But the three strikes law, it was actually originated from a case that happened in Fresno. A young lady, I think she was a young girl. I think she was a young girl. She was probably like your ages, like 22, 21, 22, named Kimber Reynolds. She was down in the Tower District, had left a restaurant called Livingstone's, which I think burnt down not too long ago. But they might have reopened. But anyways, she was downtown, down in the Tower District, having drinks with some friends, and she was getting into her car, and she was shot and killed by a parolee, a guy who'd been to prison after having been convicted of serious violent crimes on numerous occasions. Her dad, who is still alive, lives in the Fresno area. I think he's a photographer, actually. His name is John Reynolds. He joined forces with some legislators in the Fresno area, and they wrote up the three strikes law. Basically, what it was that if you committed 2 serious violent felonies and a third felony of any sort, you were going to prison for life. Okay, so a lot of people were walking around saying, oh, my uncle, he stole a piece of pizza and now he's in prison for the rest of his life. Okay, well, your uncle had 2 serious violent felonies before he stole that piece of pizza. You know what I mean? Okay, serious violent felony is when someone has been, typically it means injury. So it's been a really serious crime. 2 serious crimes have been committed before that third. But anyways, so 3 strikes is probably going away. It's been little by little going away in California because we realized with 3 strikes that our prisons became too overpopulated because of the 3 strikes law. People were saying that it was inhumane. Which of these concepts applied to the 3 strikes law? Retribution? Yeah. Deterrence? Yeah. Incapacitation? Yeah, probably all of them. These were a couple cases where the Supreme Court upheld the 3 strikes law and said, yeah, it's not cruel and unusual punishment. Ultimately, Californians voted, I believe it was Prop 36, and wanted to lessen the impact of 3 strikes. I do see strikes going away little by little. In California, we simply don't have beds for all of our offenders. Treatment. I think you know what treatment is. We want something that can help someone to get better. We're trying to fix a problem. A lot of people commit crimes for reasons like mental illness, reasons like they're trying to get drugs, reasons like maybe, did I already say mental illness, drug use? There's a lot of reasons why people commit crime. Trying to fix the problem, the underlying problem, is the concept of treatment. So you can read all about treatment. No single program, of course, works for all offenders. Some people are just evil, bad people and just want to commit crime. Some people are sick and need help. So, you know, it all just kind of depends on each offender is different. There are different ethical frameworks for corrections. Utilitarianism, ethical formalism, ethics of care, and this guy's name is so hard for me to say. Rawlsian ethics. So, okay, so utilitarianism, basically punish to benefit the majority. So we ultimately want the offender to get better and stop victimizing the community. Ethical formalism, we ultimately are just looking to punish the offender. Ethics of care, we are looking to we'll see that term restorative justice. We're looking to heal the community and make sure the entire community is whole. And then the last one, I'm not going to even try and say it again. A loss of rights should only take place when it is consistent with the best interest of the least advantaged. Okay, so in those type of ethics, they're looking at why the offender committed the crime and how the punishment or correctional service, or it's punishment really, how the punishment impacts the offender overall. So if he was a poor man going in and he stole food because he couldn't afford to feed his family, he goes into prison, he comes out, he can't get a job now because he's a felon. Does that make him better off than he was before, or even worse? So that's the concept of these type of ethics. We don't want the offender to come out worse than they were when they went in a worse position. So that's this one. Rawlsian. There you go. Whew. Rawlsian. Okay. Punishment. Okay. Punishment has also changed significantly over time. In the early days of what we would call corrections, punishment was not lock people up in a prison. This is relatively new. This is not how it's always been. We used jails in the early United States, early history of the United States. We only used jails to hold people until their punishment could be imposed. And typically the punishment was corporal punishment of some sort, whether that be flogging. Usually it was fines. People typically had to pay money. But being held in custody for long periods of time, that was not considered a form of punishment in our early history. However, we have since, obviously, decided to use prison as a form of, and long-term incarceration as a form of punishment. It does not carry the physical pains of flogging or mutilation, but it is painful because of all of this stuff, right? We keep people from their families, loved ones, deprive them of their freedom, and they are expensive. Okay, so we were talking, let's see. We were looking into colleges for my daughter. Let's see, this year, NYU. For my daughter to go to NYU, the total price tag was $80,000 a year. Okay, that's NYU, New York University. She decided not to go there because it was $80,000 a year. It costs about $75,000 a year to house an inmate in a California prison. One inmate. Pretty expensive. Do you make $75,000 a year? Because I'm going to say most people probably don't. It's a lot of money. They are very expensive. What is cruel and unusual punishment? Oh, we all have different ideas about this. What is cruel and unusual? Playing Baby Shark over and over again? Yeah, we've already talked about that. I don't know, but unusual by frequency. Punishments that are rarely used become unusual. Evolving standards of decency. Flogging used to be normal. And flogging is basically hitting people with something, a stick of some sort or whatever. Punishment that shocks the conscience. Excessive or disproportionate. Any punishment that is disproportionate or administered excessively, or unnecessary punishment. Unnecessary would probably be like the Baby Shark thing. There was a case in, I believe it was Delaware a few years ago, where an inmate continuously was gassing the correctional officers. And gassing is throwing things like urine, semen, or feces at the correctional officers. Okay, so what they did as his punishment was they fed him what they called a prison loaf. What they would get all of the nutrients he needed for the day, you know, his meat, vegetables, starch, whatever it was. They would grind it up, bake it into a loaf, and they fed him that for I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And that was all he got. So he sued the prison and claimed that it was cruel and unusual punishment because they kept feeding him prison loaf. So every time he would work his way out of the 3 weeks with prison loaf, he would gas the officers again and then end up with another 3 weeks with the prison loaf. And I'm gonna ask you, I'll tell you at the end of the PowerPoint what happened in that case. Did he win his suit, his civil suit, or his cruel and unusual punishment suit against the prison? I'll tell you at the end. Okay. And you know I'm going to forget at the end, but anyways. Were they forced to feed him normal food after he kept gassing them? Shaming. Is shaming a good punishment? Shaming does not work. We have found that shaming does not work. People will try and make people walk around wearing a shirt that says, I'm a loser, or I steal. It has been found to have negative effects. I'm not sure why we care about Supermax Prisons in this particular class, but you're familiar with Supermax Prisons. Probably these are the most secure prisons. They typically are going to have people, these are the most expensive prisons as well because they're most highly supervised. They have a lot of staff. The inmates are segregated quite frequently. Most secure facilities can be pretty harsh. Typically, you're going to have your high-profile cases here. You're going to have your very manipulative, violent offenders. Yeah, I'm not sure why we have that in there. Cruel and unusual punishment. We were just talking about that. Capital punishment. That means the death penalty. Is failure to apply the capital punishment fairly invalidate its use? Is it applied fairly? So over time, there have been Supreme Court rulings that have limited the use of the death penalty. The Supreme Court has found that if they are mentally ill or mentally handicapped, and based on different circumstances, people could not be put to death. And then if someone was under 18 at the time the offense was committed, they would, even if they were charged as an adult, they would not be eligible for the death penalty. That was a fairly recent case. I believe that was early 2000s, actually. Should punishment be profitable? Is there such a thing as a private prison? You bet there is. Are people making money off that? You bet they are. Is that unethical? I don't know. Sure seems like it could have some conflict of interest. One of the things that seems like a significant conflict of interest for a private prison would be that what would their goal, let me back up. How do private prisons make money? I'll tell you how they make money. They get money from the state or federal government when the state or federal government pays them to house inmates. The state or federal governments, their own prisons get full, and the state or federal government has to pay these private institutions to house inmates. They pay per inmate. Is the state or the private prison motivated to rehabilitate the inmate and get the inmate out of custody? Of course not. As soon as that inmate is out of custody, that private prison is not getting paid anymore. Makes sense? It sure does seem like that would be a conflict of interest. Anyways, is it unethical to make money off of punishment? I don't know. People make money off of everything. So I don't know if that is unethical, but it certainly does seem to be conflict of interest for the private prisons to house inmates for the state. But that's just me. Formal ethics for correctional professionals. Yeah. Integrity, respect for protection of individual rights, service to the public, importance and sanctity of law, prohibition against exploiting professional authority for personal gain. Correctional officer subculture. Do you think there is one? Of course there is. They are very much like police. They sorry, are very much like police. They're every day when they walk into that correctional facility, they know that there are probably hundreds of people who would love to see them dead. Every day. Absolutely, positively every day. Every single day as they walk into those doors, there are inmates who are watching every move they make, hoping that they'll make a mistake so that they can pounce. So it's not an easy, chill, mellow job. And people are like, they just sit around and they make lots of money. Yeah, you know what? They do make a decent living. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Probation, parole. Wow, how dare they call probation officers and parole agents cynics? Sometimes having been a probation officer for a long time, I can say that there were days when I was extremely frustrated with my clients, as we called them. It was very frustrating because I could tell them a million times over to do the right thing. And probably one time out of 50, they actually listened. Very heavy caseloads. Pay was just okay. And discussion questions. Okay, so you can talk about these. And let me tell you, the Delaware case, the guy lost his case. He had to keep eating that prison loaf because he kept throwing poop at people.